Good morning and welcome. It is so nice to be here with you today. My name is Misa Iwama. I'm the Director of Music Ministry, and we are here in chilly, cold, but crystal clear and beautiful Summit, New Jersey, which is the land of the Lenape. For those who might want a visual description, I am, as almost always, wearing black. I have shoulder-length hair. I have glasses. I'm here with the choir that is wearing all black with red stoles today. And I'm so happy to be here with the different people who are helping us have a worship experience together, and especially with our special guest, Reverend Charles Loflin, who is the Executive Director of UU Faith Action in New Jersey. He's an affiliated community minister for the UU congregation in Montclair and a graduate of the Meadville Lombard Theological School. And we're going to start this morning with the song Woyaya. Now I know that if you are watching online, you can fill your room, your house, wherever you are with the sound of your voice. As we here will fill this room with the sound of our voices. Woyaya means we are going. And wherever we are going, we'll go as a community. So this is hymn number 1020. I invite you to rise in any way possible and join in singing. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, 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 oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Good morning. My name is Wim Sveldens, and I am your worship associate this morning. For those of you who are visually impaired, I am tall, extremely young, handsome, movie star. Why is that funny? No, I am tall, but I'm aging with grayish, receding hair, and I'm wearing a white shirt, a brown vest. Good morning, everybody. We now light our chalice. We do so with the reading of Reverend Jamie Yandel, called The Sacred Power of Justice, that he read to a crowd of people at the Lights for Liberty Vigil in Pittsburgh. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope. In moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown, we light this flame and we are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic and powerful people is rooted in diverse ways we answer the call to love.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Menendez, she, hers, and I'm a member of the chaplain team here in Beacon. For those who need a visual idea, I'm 5'2", eyes of blue, blonde hair, and a wise woman. Chaplains extend the spiritual care of our community, and we define spiritual care as intentional compassion through presence and listening, and we keep all conversations strictly confidential. Chaplains also facilitate the weekly ritual of community candle lighting, and together we light candles of joy, sorrow, and gratitude. This morning, we light a candle of sorrow and support for all of those impacted by the shooting at the parade for the Chiefs in Kansas City. One woman is dead and 22 others were injured. We kindle a light for the action to end gun violence and the ripples of trauma caused by this shooting. During Black History Month, we light a candle of gratitude for all the Black musicians, composers, singers, instrumentalists, whose extraordinary talents have throughout our history and still today continue to shape the music of America and the world. And a candle of joy for the brilliance of sunlight on newly fallen snow, and for all the laughter and play that snow inspires. For this, and for so much more, we invite you to come forward now to light a candle here in the sanctuary, at home, or wherever you may be.
Our next song is going to be number 1023, Building Bridges. Because the choirs who get to do it in a round, we'll do it together one time through, and then we will split into parts. So no matter when you come in, it's going to be exactly the right time. You'll see that we have staggered entrances, and anything you'd like to join is perfectly fine. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, you reach out to me. With all
take a few moments for some quiet reflection. If you're comfortably seated, we ask you to sort of take position in your chair or wherever you're sitting at home. Maybe uncross your legs, feel your feet touch the floor. If you so choose to, pick a point to gaze or gently close your eyes. And we will start these few moments by quieting our minds and focusing our attention on our breath. We know we breathe every living moment of the day and night, usually without even noticing it, because we're so busy with our mind with so many other things. But for a few moments, we're going to do the opposite. We're only going to notice our breath. We're going to notice every little detail of it. And as we do so, we will gently let go of all the other thoughts that are buzzing in our mind. We'll focus on how the air passes our nostrils, enters into our body. We will deliberately slow down the pace of breathing. We will feel the air enter our lungs. We'll feel our lungs expand and our chest expand. We will notice that brief little moment at the end of the in-breath, when the lungs are full, the chest is expanded, our shoulders are back. We will just observe that moment. So on every in-breath, more the things that we long and may need, like love, compassion, joy. And as we breathe them in, we let them permeate our whole bodies. We feel how this breath, the love and joy from the universe, reaches every final point of our body, all the way through our arms, into our fingertips, all the way to our torso, into our legs, into the tip of our toes. And we feel that rhythm reaching our head and the tip of our head. And we have our whole body move in unison. We also let go some of the things we can do without. Maybe regrets from the past. The past is gone, will not come back, cannot be changed. We let them go and send them back in the universe. We may also let go of worries, things that keep us up, anxieties, things about the future which hasn't happened anyway, and we can let go. So we can really bring our entire body and mind into this very present moment, right here, right now. The one thing that we know is real. And we try to the freedom to come here, the physical freedoms we have, but also the mental freedoms we have, to let our thoughts go where we want them to go, to have our convictions and feelings and be able to voice them. Now we know in this world that we come from and live in, there are lots of challenges. There are inequalities, there are prejudices, oppressions, privileges, exploitations, marginalizations. And we try to find the liberation from them, the freedom to break free and liberate ourselves. And we know sometimes we think of ourselves as the subjects of these inequalities, but maybe also sometimes we inadvertently are actors on them as well. and we try to find liberation from both sides. So we can be free and connect to our basic humanity, to each other's basic humanity, be liberated together, fight oppression. We take a few more breaths, try to enjoy the present, try to acknowledge our liberation. And in a few moments, we can gently open our eyes again and bring our gaze back into this service, which we will now resume. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is, wow. I actually wasn't expecting a response, but thank you. Makes me feel a lot better. Whew. First, my name is Kendall Morano. I'm a short Asian woman with not quite shoulder-length dark brown hair, and I've been asked to speak about my experience with the Beacon leaders attending the Sweat Lodge ceremony with Ramapo Muncie elders Owl and Lehman. Back in November, there were a group of leaders from the board, the Widening the Circle Committee, and the building team, FET, who gathered with the Ramapo Muncie elders, Owl and Lehman, to participate in a sweat. I had no idea what to expect, but somewhere I had the idea that it would be a passive experience. I would go and sit in the lodge and listen as the Wide elders led us in a beautiful spiritual practice. It was beautiful and it was healing, but it was not passive. There were 4 rounds of sweat, and the first was the most surprising. The flap went down on the entrance to the small domed lodge, and we were sitting in pitch black. Then Lehman, our elder, splashed hot water on the hot stones in the center of the lodge, and we were hit in the face with a smothering amount of hot steam. Round 1, I was actively trying to ground myself, acclimate to the heat, while listening to Lehman's chanting and prayers for Beacon's future. Round 2, we were asked to state our own intentions. I felt nervous trying to think of something good to say when it was my turn, but in listening to everyone else around me speak, I realized that it was good enough to speak my heart. I prayed for our future as a congregation, that we may be able to navigate our upcoming momentous changes with the new building and maintain our beloved community. Round 3, we all sang our favorite hymns and songs, dripping with sweat, but smiling in the darkness. Round 4 went by so fast. When it was time to leave the lodge, we all commented, it didn't feel like we were quite ready to leave. As we stepped back out into the chilly fall sunlight, I felt a deeper commitment to Beacon, our amazing community, and our future plans for the new building. Daunting, but bright. The Ramapo Muncie elders graciously shared their time and spiritual practice with us to help us build relationship and to clarify our path forward. And as we seek to create our new building on their ancestral land, they will again help us to ask for the Creator's blessing. So this Sunday, we'll be gratefully receiving offering for the Sweetwater Cultural Center, which is the organization of the Ramapo Muncie Lenape Nation to promote the education, health, and welfare of indigenous or native peoples. This important organization supports Indigenous interests in the region through environmental activism, by opposing the development of a new natural gas pipeline called Project Maple, and through cultural celebration as they host the region's Indigenous ceremonies and showcase Native American art and artists, preserving their history and way of life. This is our final collection for the Sweetwater Cultural Center, so all of your contributions will go directly to this organization. This is so important to the Ramapo Muncie Lenape Nation and our friends, Lehman and Owl, who so generously gave us their time and guidance. This morning's offering will be greatly received.
Thank you, Misa and the choir. We have two readings today, both in the theme of liberation. The first reading is from James Cone in his writing titled, God of the Oppressed. Indeed, our survival and liberation depend upon our recognition of the truth when it is spoken and lived by the people. If we cannot recognize the truth, then it cannot liberate us from untruth. To know the truth is to appropriate it, for it's not mainly reflection and theory. Truth is divine action entering into our lives and creating the human action of liberation. Our second reading is adapted from Gustavo Gutierrez's Theology of Liberation. The theology of liberation attempts to reflect on the experience and meaning of the faith based on the commitment to abolish injustice and to build a new society. This theology must be verified by the practice of their commitment, by active, effective participation in the struggle which the exploited social classes have undertaken against their oppressors. Liberation from every form of exploitation, the possibility of a more human and dignified life, the creation of a new humankind, all pass through this struggle. But in the last instance, we will have an authentic theology of liberation only when the oppressed themselves can freely raise their voices and express themselves directly and creatively in society and in the heart of the people of God. When they themselves account for the hope which they bear, when they are the protagonists of their own liberation. We must be careful not to fall into intellectual self-satisfaction, into a kind of triumphalism of erudite and advanced new versions. The only thing that is really new is to accept day by day the gift of the Spirit, which makes us love, in our concrete options to build a true human fellowship, in our historic initiatives to subvert an order of injustice.
Good morning. So I am the Reverend Charles Loflin. I am here today. I am a 6 foot tall, middle-aged, mostly bald, but with a rough beard, white man. But it is my pleasure to be with you today. I'm grateful for the invitation to speak to you here at Beacon. I have the distinct honor of serving as the executive director for UU Faith Action New Jersey. In fact, my office is right up there, right behind that wall. So I get to spend some wonderful time here in this building. Now, I also want to say, I know this congregation, and I know that most of you know a lot about UU Faith Action and its predecessor. It's been a part of the DNA of this congregation. So I am, to some extent, preaching both literally and figuratively to the choir this morning. And these choir members deserve like extra pay because they sat through the first service. They came back and they decided to stay yet again. So they're either very polite or gluttons for punishment. We will see, but you'll have to thank them. But if you do know anything about the history of UU Faith Action, you know that we were formed originally as the Unitarian Universalist Legislative Ministry of New Jersey, because we UUs just love really long names that just roll off the tip of the tongue. The vision behind the formation of UU-LMNJ, which is now called UU Faith Action, was a coalition of the UU congregations in the state who wanted to have a collective voice, specifically at the state legislature, for lifting up UU values, working for social justice issues over those years. And from the beginning, This congregation has been central to the work of that. The idea originally came out of Princeton, and Beacon was one of the very first congregations to come on board. Over the years, you have been a true champion for the organization. You have provided leadership in terms of not only clergy from this congregation, but a host of volunteers who've served in so many ways. You make it possible for us to live into our vision, which is to build a just New Jersey, free from systemic oppression and greed, full of engaged people committed to each other, to our communities, and to the earth. We say that our mission is threefold. We seek to educate, advocate, and mobilize. And our work is centered around specific justice areas. We call them task forces. And our task forces currently include criminal justice reform, environmental justice, immigration justice, reparative justice, and reproductive justice. In addition, we have an internal working group that's looking at the issue of LGBTQ issues here in New Jersey and trying to determine if there is a need for an LGBTQ task force that would be focused on legislative issues in New Jersey. Whether we decide ultimately that a task force is called for or not, we still feel as UU Faith Action we have a role to play in helping to connect our congregations who are doing this work one with another. Our work is really grounded in collaboration, working together, working smarter, not harder. And I really, more than anything else this morning, I want you to know that I am here to say thank you. I want to thank this congregation for its dedication of time and energy, but also to thank you for your ongoing financial commitment to our organization, which makes this work possible. Of our budget, 30% of the total amount comes directly from the affiliated UU congregations in the state. And Beacon leads the way there. You are our highest contributing contribution in the state. But if 30% comes from our congregations, where does that other 70% come from? Well, you might have guessed it. It comes from individual donors within our congregations who feel especially called to the work that we're doing and are able to financially support us. And again, this congregation is replete with folks who have given generously of their time, their talent, and their treasure to sustain the work that we're doing. Your congregational support, as well as your individual commitment, does make a difference. I want you to hear that. It really does make a difference. We are small in terms of numbers, in terms of the total number of Unitarian Universalists in the state. We are small. We have an outsized impact when it comes to the legislative work that we do because we are known colloquially with our collaboration partners as the people who show up. And that's half the battle, is showing up. And we are able to show up because our congregations believe in this work and they dedicate both the financial resources and the very, very important resources of human capital that make it possible. There have been so many key leaders of our organization who've called Beacon home that it would be folly for me to try to list them all because invariably I would leave off some very important names. I will, however, mention the three folks at Beacon who are currently involved in our board or task force leadership. They were all in the earlier service, so I got to recognize them in the room. But these are people you know and love, and I hope the next time you see them, you will extend your thank you to them for the work that they do with us. I want to specifically call out Nancy Griffith, who is a member of our board and works tirelessly with our environmental justice task force. That is such a calling for Nancy. She's also served as a congregational liaison for Beacon with UU Faith Action. Marty Rothfelder is the current immigration justice task force chair. He's stepping into that role solo as our longtime task force leader, Ted Fetter, who some of you may know, is finally stepping back after years and years of service. We are grateful to Marty for stepping into those large shoes and continuing the important work of immigration justice. And last but not least, I am so very grateful for the amazing Mia Morse, who is the president of the board of UU Faith Action New Jersey. It has been my great pleasure to serve at this organization, but it has been a blessing beyond explanation to have Mia there during my time as executive director. Her commitment to the organization, her commitment to doing this work in a deep and relational way, her commitment to building collaboration, it makes such a difference. And I am grateful to Beacon for loaning us so much of Mia's time as president. One of the great joys of a service like this is actually super helpful for me as an executive director. First, to say, as I have said, thank you. Like, if you hear nothing else today other than how thankful we are for your continued collaboration, that will have been enough, right? We could end the service right now, call it a day. We could all go home happy because saying thank you is that important. It really, really is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. But it's also important to have opportunities like this because oftentimes it is through situations like these services where people first learn about UU Faith Action and the connection that we have with your congregation, or learn more in a way that they get intrigued and want to get involved. And I could easily spend all of my time today going on and on and on about the work that we do, of detailing the specific issues that our various task forces are working on, of laying out the landscape for social justice work in New Jersey. This is not a time to be timid or tepid. This is a time where our involvement matters. It matters in a huge way. We are entering an election season for which there is much anxiety and fear, understandably, especially on a national level. But it's true in New Jersey as well. Much of our hard-earned victories over these last few years in the area of social justice could easily find opposition depending on who the next governor of this state is. So we continue to do this work because we think that it matters so very, very much. I love talking about the organization, right? I love it. If you want to hear more about the things that we do, I invite you to reach out to me anytime. I would love to talk to you about potentially serving on our board. We need board members who come from diverse backgrounds in our UU congregations. We need congregational liaisons, the folks who serve as a go-between, to make sure that you know about the things that we're doing, but also that we know about the social justice work that you're doing here in Beacon, because we want the partnership to be two-way. We don't want to feel like we're only taking resources from you. We want to contribute to helping make your social justice work here meaningful. I'd love to talk to you about that and so much more. And I hope you will find me at some point, or call me, or reach out via email, because I really, really love talking to UUs about why this work matters for them. It makes a huge difference in how we go about this work. But and lastly, let me say on that front, if you are not already receiving communications from us, and I'll just ask for a show of hands, how many of you get our emails, action alerts, newsletters? Quite a few of you. Excellent. If you don't, what I want to encourage you to do this afternoon is go to our website, which you can find at uufaithaction.org, uufaithaction.org, and at the very top of that page, there is a blue bar with a link in it that says sign up for email and text alerts. That's super important, because if you click on that link and give us your email, we can add you to our mailing list so that you receive updates, action alerts about what action you can take, whether it's sending an email to particular legislators or calling particular folks on certain committees. Also about mobilization opportunities. You'll receive our newsletter, a monthly calendar of events, and so much more. This is critical for us because we do not send unsolicited emails ever. So the only way you will receive our communication is if you go to our website and opt in to receive those communications. Alternatively, if you want to catch me after the service, I'll sign you up on my cell phone right here. I mean, I'm working today, so of course I would be more than happy to do that. But while I could spend the rest of my time talking about how great this organization is, and how important it is, I actually want to frame our discussion together today, our time together, in a slightly different way. I want to pose a question for you to think about, you, Beacon congregation, at Summit, the Beacon UU congregation at Summit, I want to pose a question. Now, I know a little something about the history of this congregation, and I am very much aware of your well-deserved reputation for the great social justice work that you already do. There's a lot of it, right? Beacon Hope and Equity Center, amazing, really, really fabulous work. The Summit Warm Hearts program, super, super important. Direct service, providing direct access for folks most in need. We could mention the partner church collaboration that you've had, the relationship that you've developed and maintained over the years, and so many other community partnerships, both directly here in Summit and beyond the walls of Summit. You have regional impact, you really, really do. From my own interactions at UU Faith Action, just working with folks from Beacon at various marches and rallies or taking actions, I know that social justice is a part of your DNA because I've talked with the members from this community. It's right there in your mission statement, isn't it? Your mission statement says our mission is to be a radically inclusive religious community that feeds the human spirit and heals the world. Now, that may not contain the phrase social justice, but it sure contains the essence of it, doesn't it? What a beautiful phrase, to feed the human spirit and heal the world. So I'm not saying anything revolutionary. I'm simply stating the obvious to some extent. If I stand before you today and I say, Beacon, you are committed to social justice. And most of you can just nod your heads and say, yes, we are. We are committed to social justice. So that's not the question I'm asking. I'm not asking if you're committed to social justice. I already know that you are. Here's the question that I am asking, though. Why? Why are you so committed to social justice? That's kind of a bizarre question to ask, isn't it? Why? Does it really matter? Why? I mean, we believe in social justice. We're doing the work. There's no doubt about it. We have the reputation. Does it matter why we're doing the work of social justice? Yeah, I think it does. You know, if we were to take the time now, which we won't, but if we were to take the time to break into small groups with the folks that are here, to answer that question, to just throw it around a bit, we'd get a lot of different answers. If we broke into 5 groups, I dare say we'd come back with 10, 15, maybe 20 different answers. They do say that whenever you ask 10 UUs their opinion on any one thing, you're likely to get at least twice as many opinions as there are people in the room. But I seriously want us to think a little bit about what some of those answers might be. Answers to the question of why social justice is important. Not just important in Unitarian Universalism in the larger context, but important for this congregation. Well, some of you might say, well, it's important because we have a long history of social justice activity as Unitarian Universalists. And you would be right. You would absolutely be right. Here's just a quick list over the many decades and centuries of Unitarians, Universalists, and Unitarian Universalists who've stood for social justice. Judith Sargent Murray in 1790, she wrote an essay on the equality of the sexes, 1790, arguing that women should be treated equally with men, especially in their religious communities. Henry David Thoreau wrote Civil Disobedience. That was about his justification for refusing to pay his poll tax because he said that the money was going to a system that was abetting and condoning slavery, taking an issue. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, an African American who fought for the suffragist movement in this country and who implored the white suffragists of her day to rise above her, quote, airy nothings and selfishness that reinforce the oppression of black women. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was a Unitarian. There was the Reverend Joseph Jordan, who was the first black Universalist minister ever ordained. He opened a school in Virginia for black children in 1887. There's Martha and the Reverend Waitstill Sharp, who orchestrated the rescue of hundreds of adults and children from the Nazis during World War II. There is the civil rights leader, Whitney M. Young Jr., who fought for workplace discrimination. Even more recently, in 2016, there were 50 UU ministers who joined over 500 clergy to support protests at Standing Rock to block expansion of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Here at Beacon, you would add many other names to that list, names who have worked tirelessly here at Summit, names that would include both clergy and lay leaders who have been focused on the work of social justice. So yes, social justice is in our history. We could say one of the reasons we do social justice is because that's what we've always done. It's part of who we are. Isn't that enough? Others might say, well, yeah, but the work of social justice, the why of social justice, maybe it isn't because we've just done it before, but because our UU values demand it of us. The values that we hold call us to social justice work. If you look at our current principles, the word justice appears explicitly in 2 of the principles, explicitly calling for justice. But I can easily make the case that the theme of social justice, that the heart of social justice runs through all of the principles, right? And in the Article 2 proposed revisions, I hope you are familiar with the Article 2 proposed revisions. I hope all of us are. We will be voting on those at GA this year. How many of you have seen the new shared values flower graphic? Has anyone seen that? It's beautiful. You should really see it. And I love the direction that they're going, that it's going to be part of the proposed changes that will include a graphic to try to help explain what our values are. And that graphic has a chalice with the word love in the center. And then around it are specific justice or specific value areas arranged like petals of a flower. Justice is on that list. The others are, it's justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And again, I would argue that social justice flows through all of those elements, and social justice that is centered and grounded in love, that's a powerful message. Love is at the center. Why social justice? Because our values demand nothing less. I'm reminded of the quote by Dr. Cornel West. He says, "Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public." Isn't that a great statement? Justice is what love looks like in public. Perhaps that's an answer to the question of why. If ours is to be a faith beyond platitudes and self-serving navel-gazing, then it must include a public aspect. And what could be more public for us than to stand for justice? Perhaps there are some here that would answer the question of why social justice in a much more vulnerable way. Perhaps you would say, I believe that we must be about social justice because I'm scared. I'm scared of the world that I'm living in. A world where there is growing inequality and there is an existential threat of authoritarianism. And whether we are talking about inequalities in wealth and income, inequalities in education or housing, whether we're talking about bodily autonomy or the simple right for some people to exist, it's all on the line. We are headed into an election season that is marked by understandably great anxiety and fear. So perhaps our reason for social justice is that personal because we feel like it really, really matters right now. I also want to point out here that while that may be a new experience for some of us because of our social location, we may not be used to feeling vulnerable in this country. That is not the case for all of us. Some of us have known for a really, really long time. Some people hold identities where they have always been under oppression and under attack in this country. I would suggest that they are the people we should be turning to now in our anxiety, because they have learned a resilience for how to cope. To my white people out there, we have not flexed those muscles very well, but we have kin who are amongst us who have. Let us turn to them because they can lead the way in a time of anxiety and fear. But maybe that is the question to why social justice. Maybe it's social justice because I am afraid, or you are afraid, or we are afraid. And maybe if we're being completely honest, even if we might not be willing to say it out loud, some of us might be thinking, well, I don't know why. I mean, I kind of feel like social justice is important, but I really have a hard time articulating why. I can't explain it in a way that makes much sense. In fact, a lot of us have a hard time explaining Unitarian Universalism in a way that makes sense to anybody else. It's a common problem for us. And maybe we say, do I really need to know why? I mean, if I'm doing it, isn't that enough? As long as I'm involved in the work of social justice, isn't that enough? Do I really need to know why? Do I? It appears that even if we do agree generally that social justice is super important to the Beacon UU congregation here at Summit, there's probably not consensus on exactly why it's important. And maybe that's inevitable. I mean, we are a community that honors diversity and respects pluralism. Perhaps it's the best we can hope for under the circumstances. Maybe. But it does make me wonder. It makes me wonder if our social justice work isn't as effective as it could be because we're not really clear on why we're doing it in the first place. It makes me wonder if our struggles to decide what social justice efforts to be a part of come from a lack of clarity about the why. That if we had a clearer understanding of the undergirding why, it would become almost self-evident what the what was. I think the why is important. And I'm going to share that this is near and dear to me because my calling as a Unitarian Universalist minister is wrapped up in the concept of social justice. I feel called specifically to do the work of social justice. And as my theology has evolved on this point over the years, I understand now the work of social justice in a very particular way that I want to share with you. I want to share with you my why. My why ultimately boils down to this in a nutshell. My why for why do the work of social justice is that I feel called to this work through an anti-oppression lens. In other words, I think all social justice work at its core should be about fighting oppression. One of the things I lean on here is Iris Marion Young wrote a very influential book called Justice and the Politics of Difference. And in this book, she categorizes 5 kinds of oppression that she says that we are fighting. Exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. She calls these the 5 faces of oppression, and I find them quite useful in terms of focusing the social justice work that I want to do, of figuring out why I want to do it. I want to be an advocate fighting to dismantle systems of exploitation and marginalization and powerlessness and cultural imperialism and violence. All of those things are important to me. In addition, I lean heavily on the work of Paulo Freire, who in the very late 60s, 1968, he lived and worked in Brazil. He wrote a groundbreaking work called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he argues for a new way of understanding liberation. Essentially, he's working in an educational context, and the sort of main thrust of his argument is that, and he uses the word students, but this doesn't necessarily mean young people. He was mostly working with adults, but I would argue that we could also substitute the word congregants or participants in a community of faith. He was fighting against the idea that students or congregants or these folks who are the learners, that they are empty vessels, that they are basically boxes waiting to be filled. And what they need is some expert, some leader, someone with more power and more knowledge to come in and fill those empty boxes. He called that the banking system of education, and he was determined to try to get rid of it. Instead of empty vessels waiting to be filled, he was arguing that those who are most impacted have to be part of the conversation about what's really going on. They have to be part of growing into a critical awareness, and from this came the idea of critical pedagogy. The ultimate aim of Freire's philosophy was to liberate individuals from oppressive systems in order to foster a more just and equitable society. And here's some of the key findings that intersect with me for social justice work. He argues that liberation is ultimately the task of the oppressed. In other words, you can't liberate someone else. Ultimately, we can only self-liberate. What we can do, though, is work to dismantle the tools, the systemic tools, that keep some people from having the power necessary to live into their own self-liberation. That's what Freire is calling for. A new system where the people who are most impacted are learning to liberate themselves. It is not liberation for the oppressed. It is liberation of the oppressed. That informs my social justice work these days. I think of the work that I do not as doing for others, not really even as doing with others, but doing my part to make sure that the power sharing that's necessary so that the marginalized can claim their own power and live into their own liberation becomes possible. This led directly to the movement in the 1970s that we refer to as the theology of liberation movement, that again started in South America, primarily in the Catholic Church. One of our readings today from Gustavo Gutierrez is considered that foundational approach to liberation theology. And this has a connection to Unitarian Universalism, believe it or not. As many of you may have been aware, back in 2020, the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change wrote a report called Widening the Circle of Concern. And it was looking specifically at the issues in our faith around racial justice over the last few years, which has been such a divisive issue amongst us. And one of the key recommendations of this commission is that UUs need to articulate a theology of liberation that would work for Unitarian Universalism. In other words, I would say they're telling us we need to figure out what the why is. Because if we figure out the why, it will simply follow what it is we must do. Now, what does that look like? Okay, I'm out of time, but I'm going to give you a couple of really quick overview statements for what I think a social justice commitment seen through a liberation theology lens. These are minimum requirements, in my opinion, some things that we would need to hold. First, such a social justice commitment, such a why, would be rooted in our commitment to anti-oppression. I think we need to proclaim that every single chance that we get. Why do we do this work? Because we're fighting oppression. We're fighting the specific forms of oppression. We're going to name them. That's why we do this work. Not to make ourselves feel better, but because there are systems that need to change, oppressive systems that are keeping people from claiming their own liberation. Commitment to anti-oppression. Second, that commitment to anti-oppression also must mean centering those who are most impacted. We cannot do this for others. We must empower people to do this for themselves. We are not saviors of the world. We are co-conspirators and collaborators for helping people find their own justice. We must center those who are truly impacted. Third, such a commitment would require collaborative partnership. Real partnership, not just partnership in name, not just making it look like, but actual power sharing, where we are using the power and privilege that we have to make sure that those who don't have a real voice at the table, and then we take their lead in how change will happen. Collaborative partnership. The fourth, we must be committed to critical reflexivity. What does that mean? It means that we must always be willing and able to scrutinize how our own values, our own needs, and our own biases are always at play in the work of social justice. This isn't something you figure out by going to a training and then suddenly it's not a problem anymore. It's an ongoing issue in every single relationship we have in social justice circles. We have to ask ourselves, how does our social location impact what is going on, and how might we be reinforcing unintentionally the systems of oppression that we're trying to fight? And fifth and finally, this commitment would include a true commitment to collective liberation. Collective liberation. One of my favorite quotes comes from the Aboriginal Australian activist Lila Watson. She says, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's get to work." I'm particularly motivated by that last one. It raises the stakes, doesn't it? It gives us a why that we can get behind, because if I understand your liberation as intricately tied to mine, there is an urgency, there is a mandate, there is a reason to be about this work. I have an interfaith colleague who comes from the African American religious tradition that's deeply rooted in liberation theology. And I have to tell you, I love it when I get an email from him. Because whatever the contents of the email are, I know what his email signature says, and I can't wait to get through the email to get to the signature. Because he always ends it with, "It's on to liberation." Oh, friends, I dream of what the possibility of a Unitarian Universalism would be that could proudly proclaim in an authentic way and with a prophetic voice, we do this work because it's on to liberation. May it indeed be so.
Our closing hymn is number 1040. It's a spiritual hush. We're going to do 3 verses. I invite you to rise in any way possible and join in singing this musical call to action. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my what shall I do? It sounds like justice, sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do?
Our closing benediction is Our Work Has Just Begun by Emily Richards. Our work here this morning is at an end, and our work has just begun. The work of holding one another and this community of love, the work of trusting that we are on the right path, the work of believing that what connects us is stronger than what separates us, the work of engaging in that which makes us whole, the work of deeper understanding and commitment, the work of letting go of that which does not serve us, the work of radical inclusion, the work of collective liberation, the work of this beloved community, a beloved community of which we are all part. A place where we are welcomed, respected, valued, cherished, a place where we belong. Go in peace.